All right, so we'll start with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga at page 7. Thank you very much.
From the height of the unfound Saviour of the Deities Institutor, on a peak of a cloud resembling a clump of extremely white fresh road, King of Dharma, or Universe Androka, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me, on a line throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme field of merit from my mind of faith, please abide for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Your holy mind has the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanations is the ideal ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you who are meaningful to see, hear, and remember, I prostrate. Please in drinking water, the various flowers, fragrant incenses, light-scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated, I offer to you the supreme field of the merit. Whatever non-virtues of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I have collected from the endless time, I confess each and every one with a fervent regret from my heart. You slow for much learning and practice in this degenerate age, and make your freedoms and differences meaningful. By abandoning the worldly concerns, say the hour sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect pure, holy Gurus with the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion, in the sky of the Dhammakaya, please let fall a rain of the heart and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those who need to you, exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and knowledge of transmigratory beings, and in particular may cause the essence of perfect pure Lord Sankhya's teachings to shine forever. Sachi Ki Joshi Tamari Radhishi By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet and practice and actualize the teachings of victorious one, Lord Sankhyapa, who had the morality of an eminently pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of the two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Mandala By the force of having fervently requested in this way, all beings of light are emitted from the heart of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and gliding into one enter my crown. Why enter the flower of milk flows from the opening of the tube of white light, cleansing all my sickness with spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and ignorance without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. So then page 13 on the next page over, we'll recite the Miksema 5-line verse 3 times. Mikme se wete chemesi, jime jebe wambo champayan, dukum hala jonze saweta, kache kebe sunge sunkapa, lo santra peshala sowade. Mikme se wete chemesi, jime jebe wambo champayan, dukum hala jonze saweta, kache kebe sunge sunkapa, lo santra peshala sowade.
Sanji Jadan Sori Janala Chanchu Badi Dami Kazuchi Kari Chuji Bibe Zona Rola Biche Sanji Dubarasho Sanji Jadan Sori Janala Chanchu Badi Dami Kazuchi Kari Chuji Bibe Zona Rola Biche Sanji Dubarasho Sanji Jadan Sori Janala Chanchu Badi Dami Kazuchi Kari Chuji Bibe Zona Rola Biche Sanji Dubarasho Kangi Tuzini Zuni Tawa Tongji Pambiche Tambi Chun Denzi Kodam Tela Chanzelo Kejitsi Kashichi Nyan Abdizuyo
Ah,
Kejitsi Kashichi
Nico.
Wedan
Io quello che anche Geshe che ci vorrà ancora che guarda di wrestling.
Good morning everyone. Tomba this Sauro Chasla, per Maushi, Kemo Kevilla.
So we have Lisa from the Salt magazine, a Sanction Coast magazine, visiting Chimrezik Institute, and they're doing a piece about gratitude, asking Geshe a few questions. And Lisa, the photographer, came today to take a few photos of Geshe. So he says that they've walked around Geshe, had to kind of pose, smile. He had a few photos. Kind of he now feels a bit flushed.
Tinzata Nonzo the Kunzugi Sasho Kalaya and Tangoya Zorodi Nonzu Part Marwas Tinza Nonzu Chik Kanji Mimamujigaya Kokoya Taudi and I Kajitsikashi Chishundar Chonsonsra.
So of course, taking photos is not the main thing. The main thing was a few things that Geshe thought it'd be good to share with people. So there were a few questions that Geshe was asked, and he tried as much as he can to answer them.
These are touch son on the David Tony. Tangadel and Lotu Tax Rogodes. No shop Lombalayati. Lotu there, Tangi missing a gearing shoot of the Jolomba de Acuni shoot of the Nandel Dames. Tirele and it's Honand of the Chiknazu no shop and Shashopi. How don't the chick Nazu Pebatan and no shop para Kebaroch. The Ganzo danger long jog channel Hajangi Bebu in Bach. Inaya Semgum Tony Semba Magivachin, Semgum never Mambuch Yodessa Surich, but the Didojing sources Tangazu and a Pebigi Perchodojina, Dig Dosho Surich. The need to know the Didoj sources.
Geshe has been here for more than 6 years, and in the 6 years that he's been here, he managed to have a look at our society, look at the society that he came from. So in general, we can say that there are some differences between Asian societies, Occidental societies. In general, when you look at history, it seems that Western societies, so you can say Western societies, were societies that became more affluent, having greater access to resources, money, and so forth. And still, when you look at our state of mind, it seems that it is quite evident that living in an affluent society, where we have greater access to resources, does not necessarily make us happy. This is something that is quite striking, Geshe feels. It seems that in a society like this, mental unhappiness or sometimes mental illness become even more striking, particularly when Geshe says that when he compares it to his background coming from Tibetan society.
did that Tindigi Yoyagi, that's Gugenchi, Nambi, Tatusioni, Dushi Kanajin by Nia, could Gugenji Tony, Legi of a chick, and Chagores. Tinzata, Deleanganta Mambo Kejamamugachi, Domro Javana, Tantanganzo Part Jav Desagi, Dungi, and then Nananda Pendu Sogi, and you couldn't do the ya, and was Part Javers. He Nananda Pendu Kidi. Chongden di Jesu Jungin ki Sankam Seri Bajanja Ris Lavaina Yajiyatam Shutugris.
And a state of mind does not occur by its own accord. It depends upon cause and conditions. This is valid for everything that is compounded. All compounded phenomena depend upon cause and conditions. Our states of mind and so forth also depend upon cause and conditions. And Geshe says that, again, Lisa took a few photos of Geshe in different locations. Some of them were in front of the Nalanda masters. So we have here in front of the Gompa statues of a few of the Nalanda masters. And you can say that they were scientists of the mind. When you think of the working of the mind and understanding the working of the mind, you can regard those Nalanda masters to be scientists of the mind.
Tiza Taji Nazu Pebo Yonzo Ge Nanchu and Shuji Shize Tombuta Yaguri Yerslana, the Yazan Shagores. Yinaya Pebo Mon Chegi, Samkam Ki Chosado di Sangi Sedachi, the Kanji, and Nalanda Pebi. Pendu Susu Cabinet Tatus teacher, Sam Telia, and then there was Reslan Labchogores, Tabatanan Danchi, said the Pig Susu Rijong Tonba, Ledevachi, Comshi Ton, Ledevachi, Pepper Michin Jibania, Chinjun Jiban, Sam Namaria, Ninja Samsongi, Samudi, the Lamakonjo Pig. Sunyin Sunjin Jeon Big, and same thing, Tabaki Daddy, and Pepe Samgong, Triyoza, Tinji Togi, and Niesambina, Samgam Madeva, Yongin di Yong Drogiovach, sources.
Having said that, Geshe is not claiming that everything is completely perfect, hunky-dory, so to speak, in Tibetan society. It's no claiming that would be, of course, a lie, but still, you can maybe to some degree have a comparative assessment of the issues that we face here in our society and also the issues that Tibetan society faces and also the way that we are brought up. So growing up in Tibetan societies from young age, you find this total sense of reliance in the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, from very young age within the culture, within the way that you're educated and therefore develop some habits. You have that deep faith and you also develop pure appearances or pure perceptions of the objects of refuge. And Geshe reckons that that sense of reliance that you acquire from very young age in the Buddhas, the Lamas, the spiritual teachers and so forth means that from very young age you have something that you can rely upon, which Geshe feels affects at least Tibetans' state of mind. So again, it's not to say that it's a perfect society or that everyone's state of mind is completely solid. And yet Geshe reckons that still having that deep sense of reliance from young age does play a role in people's ability to be slightly happier.
Kong Nambigi, Song Shabi, Kalabdi, Tony, Nanzu Tachi, Nidan Shiva Naji, Nanzu Longju Chani, and Pendo Drugoyag, Netan Zawin, Yomar de Yachi, Sam Kamgue, and Digi Tolia, then they can be labja titani, tea uni, and Nanzuchi Lombadel Navy, Malayachi, Pendorchi Tuyagi, Tuguris Sambigi, Ding Search Ra, the Chigloma really, so the Jambi, Nyamu Sedamadu, Tindilitan, Tangan Dindijoris, Dindijuton, Tangan Delia, and the Lotri Cherry, any Pendunari, any Kundashan Soba. So the me Dindigile Migo is Ra.
The statues were carved as a request that was made by Chimrezik Institute, and we are hosting those statues here in order to reflect upon the teachings and the advice that the great Nalanda masters gave us. So the advice does not concern with how to become more financially viable, richer, more affluent, and so forth. The advice that the Nalanda master gave us, the teachings they gave us, have to do with developing our mind, developing a greater degree of mental health, mental well-being, and happiness. And Geshe is completely confident that if we listen to the advice, if we listen to the teachings of the great Nalanda masters and work with our mind in order to implement those teachings, we will be able to develop a greater degree of mental happiness and well-being.
Pena chik samkam tolaya kazu sigi bigige zo chambada ninji chanju samse di tolaya kazu sigi samlotan tuba di tsugi suzu sem kuyang droya loge chir droya chik tende chagores ranganzu ta chik se di chik po chik dhyan chik rang chik bigige ane mitsi di chik bigige chedu droya chik samlo dhyan ka chosa di chik and penjo the lonjo tindijiliya and chunjonjile migdevana ranshingi samba di pusto dogyobachi and di ton that samgan nas le devata dili mamu yungu yosarwas ra.
So then, for example, if you train your mind with the development of loving kindness and compassion, bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, your mind naturally becomes more at ease, more relaxed, more vast, spacious. Whereas if you don't train your mind in those attitudes, loving kindness and compassion and so forth, then your mind becomes solely focused on what you can get in this lifetime only, in terms of money, resources, enjoyments, and so forth. Geshe feels that your perspective becomes quite narrow, and as such, it makes it harder to deal with difficulties. Anyway, having started with that, Geshe thought of going back to the text now. So having said that, as we go back to the text, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's middling presentation of the steps of the path to enlightenment. We started to look at a section of the preparation to the meditation session. And at the preparation to the meditation session, Lama Tsongkhapa explains how we do the 6 preliminary practices, including the 7 limbs of worship. Geshe has been covering the 7 limbs of worship, and of the 7, we've covered 5, or maybe we left off in the 6th one. And the way that Lama Tsongkhapa explains that is in drawing from Samantabhadra's King of Prayer. So I'll put the verse in front of us. I'm just going to look for the right. Sorry. This. Yeah, all right. So drawing from this verse from Samantabhadra's King of Prayer, with palms together, I earnestly request, you may actualize parinirvana. Please stay with us for eons numberless as atoms of the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wanderers in samsara.
345.
345 in the Golden Book. So page 345 in the Golden Book.
reta nganzu tsik ngodon tono shugo inza te kare islamu kazi nganzu ani ta nganzu zo di denshi landor ra ani bigege lojong gramba digitele lagu inza di tengingi ani lama division ni mena nganzu ranto gi shin meba inza ani di tenro chis and social motivation in the chungo ko kurse so da so dindi chag do astra da dindi ani demning lander ni demning thi ani chi nima chi zam nyamba mai ba ni zam nyamba mai ba ani mentun gyurung chile ya ani chi ten nyengo yanza ani di ani chi kozi rimbu ra an shugo yanza da di kanji ani kozi rimbu shura chi is ra nansu chedu 아니지 다디는 용거다 난주체도 고지르무 슈로치 세게 도도디 뭔가 디레샤스.
So the point in making this request not to pass into parinirvana or not to pass away is that our goal is to train our mind in what needs to be taken up and what needs to cast aside with respect to the four truths. And as such, the knowledge of what we need to do, what we ought not to do, is not going to be born in our mind on its own accord. We need to be taught what to do and what not to do. So we are taught what we should be practicing by our spiritual teachers, by the lamas. Getting teachings one day or over 2 days is not going to cut it. What we want to do in order to become learned in the modes of changing our mind is to be educated or to get teachings continually over a long time. And for that, the Lama, the spiritual teacher, needs to live long. And this is the request that we're making here. So we have made requests to turn the wheel of Dharma, which means to continue to give us teachings. In order then to continue to receive teachings, we also want the Lamas to live long. And this is the request that is made here in the 6th limb amongst the 7 limbs of worship.
konzo di pare le kyanzu chewa yoba na nganzu chewa di tonera kishini yago sasra kuzle ediri nimjishu nyangin da shiri tsiji chi cho ju shin nyangin ne temba namla rowa namla pemba de dewa ki bichedu shingi dutaru tanda nyang ka nyangin ne da shu por so da bos.
So before I go back to the text, we have also we are double dipping today. So we also have a visiting crew from Channel 7, I believe. So we're going to also take some footage of Geshe's teaching. So in between, we might just pause for maybe a bit of discussion, questions and answers. Let's see how it works. But before we get to that, I'm just going to read from the section that Geshe wanted to cover. Hi, welcome. So if you would like Geshe to say something, or if you would like to have some questions and answers, you can also direct us what to do, and we're happy to follow along. All right, cool. All right, we'll do a thing. We'll try. All right, so then so Geshe was reading from the 6th Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation of the 6th limb of worship, which is the supplication. So supplication is set forth in the single stanza showing the passage into Nirvana. So that's from the King of Prayer. Let's try to put it on the screen again. I have too many tabs opened here. All right, so with palms together, I earnestly request you who may actualize parinirvana, please stay with us for eons, numberless as atoms of the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wanderers in samsara. So, Lama Tsongkhapa here is saying, supplication is set forth in a single stanza, showing the passage into nirvana. You supplicate those who show how to pass beyond sorrow in the fields of the 10 directions to stay, not passing into nirvana, for as many eons as the number of fine particles of dust in the universe in order to bring about the benefit and happiness of sentient beings.
걔는 되어가는 나 되어지기였어. 그래서 또 아니 단다 난주 내단 산규 거야기 단다 쳇 가르쳐도 들어가지야. 아니 민 그거였어.
Sangyur, the
집이 말이야.
So then, since we have also a kind of visiting team from Channel 7, right? So Geshe would like to ask the people here in the room, what do you reckon is the purpose of all of that? News, reporting and so forth. What is the purpose? What is the use of those means that we're using?
It's about being able to connect with other people.
Being able to connect with other people.
That we know what
그런
they're
소리
doing.
내지잖아 양편됐어.
나.
산주공은 그런 소리. 내지잖아. 가서는 내가 산주디 드링 진짜ken서 식디 모동 토네 지고치 들어와이냐 지 코데마도 마무지어라스 지 당기 지용기 먼저 낸데려야 카르카르 지기여 봤디 산주 토네 지금 로트와이너로 나데 삼고레스.
So Geshe actually wanted also to ask you guys, the team from Channel 7, what do you, what is your role or goal, or what is your thoughts about reporting on a place like this?
So our role in reporting and coming to a place like this, so we're not news people, we are showing a local audience what there is to see on the Sunshine Coast. And so a place like this is different to what we would usually cover. So we think it's important to be very broad, and I'd be minded to show people what you're doing here and why it's a good thing.
Cool. Diladi Koranso Sunshine Coast Karakata Yoba di Mimana di Shigrawa. Since such a did in the Tumoma in Besaja Shigrawa. Chesan Dila the Sunshine Coast give me, give me the Sunshine Coast Karioba di Shena Chensonsa.
The Bayabosra. Nanzu Namjuta and Karanzu Digi, Chinam Parson John, Nanzu Deliachi, Takanji, and Chushoki, and Nambi, and Sanjam then the Zebe, and Febe Mambu Shuji, and Kushayam Soba, and Nanzu Nintaba Deliachi, so soche, and Karkar Jangi of a tea such a delia. Can such a deep mixer Tomanji, the Nano dinging to meet there. Some mixers tangi over tea, dear Pachi Chatuna Yabubentos ra.
That's very good. That's excellent. Now we have here in the Buddhist center, we have a few statues, we have a temple, we have different Buddhist monuments. We also come together daily for rituals, teachings, and so forth. And all of it serves a certain purpose. The certain purpose is to develop a certain way of thinking. And this is what we want to look at. How do we develop new ways of thinking? And so Geshe reckons that part of the passing of communication between one and another is to think, to discuss, to share our ways of thinking.
These are Nansugi, need digital yards, Nansu 2000 Karlawius Labana, Nansu Susu count desert Tigi, and Lomba delia, and Susunguni, Lunga Yisangi, Nuba Kayobati, and D Tolia, and Pemba Drogo at the kitchen would do. Teaching Anzu delia, Kosu to the Shantin, Musunach Levania, and it's Sam Nonoliachi, Kaswatachi, she dig sort of led
Our goal is to try as much as we can to benefit all other living beings. We want to use our body, speech, and mind for the benefit of others. And for that end, we use different methods, different techniques. We have, for example, we have Buddhist monuments here, statues, and the like. And Geshe feels that some people find a sense of peace and relaxation just by being in an environment like this.
and this song yanza nanju di tolaya publicity di tolaya samlotani and chik zambali choyong ya dandi chale mang chuje mogeri yong des sama zawadi chadam monson singing this chik nyor tan to ya mi yu this song chini nanju lo gyak yak chedo and semgam lo jong chik jangores ro so tichi gores nanju.
There are different ways of being of benefit to others, benefiting other living beings. You can help others with giving them some advice, giving them some mental training, providing them with education of the mind. You can also do some charity works, benefiting others in a variety of ways. But here our main focus is helping others, assisting others in terms of mental development. Particularly when we recognize that our primary goal, our primary motivation is to wish to be happy and to avoid suffering. When we look at problems and difficulties that we as human societies experience around the world, we can see that places experience conflicts, war, affected by natural disasters, famine, and so forth. And all of it is related to different disturbing emotions, to afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, hatred, and so forth. So our goal is to benefit others in terms of the mental development. We would like to help others to reduce the level of disturbing emotions, anger, hatred, jealousy, pride, and so forth.
Gode yuroch mi mambole ya tindi ta di chi chiondi an zambani di nangi an chi pi lonche nganzu mi gi an lonche chechene chi lo jata mambola ya danya gi lonche di chi lo ya samasung na zodro ya sodoch ani mi mambu gi lega di chigoras tindi ki kembe zambani korang ya shide mebachi ro kanji di samalo ani dongum to and chi it
is clear and evident that our disturbing emotions are creating quite a lot of problems in our life. We have that great sense of desire, great sense of attachment that makes our mind and heart become dissatisfied with what we have now. We carelessly and heedlessly put the world to waste. We have resources that could last for many hundreds of years, and yet with a great sense of desire that cannot be satiated, we spend all of it, or we use all of it in a short span of time. Within 100 years, we spend resources that could last for much more than that. And in so doing, we create problems and unhappiness in the world.
아니 쇼침부 시세야지 된거도스. 로 쇼침부 시디 슈친찌기 아니 배촌마 만트니 아니 배면남지기 통질래야 론지치세. 조 디직 차다스. 직 단데 druchon 야가 druchon들이 아니 탈렌 초리 딘디 체치니 아니 쇼침부 시 듀거레스. 디 쇼고 짜와디 강으로 묻힐래 투도. 다 단디 차려야 강으로 묻히
직 강으로 묻히 사마 강으로 묻히 말해. 직 암도네 거서.
제. 투사직 다 간지 투사직 디 강으로 묻히는 투사기 추디 다 로추다 카시날 조도야 냥가 빼침을 해봤어.
So just a brief example, Geshe looked at a report yesterday, and they were reporting of the sources of the 4 major rivers in Asia. So you have the Brahmaputra, the Hindus, the Mekong, and so forth, flowing beginning from the Tibetan plateau and flowing all across Southeast Asia. So Geshe saw a report of one of the major rivers that begins in Kailash mountain in eastern Tibet. Scientists now say that it is likely that within 10 years it will go completely dry.
There the zawa khatuni kangrumuchi zogdogo zawta zu sadrogton. Chetan zambeling sadrogin your door dini your dre yen zo di ani nganzu mi chigyo beta ra trichela soba ani pi suya mangta teni rangjong kam kuyu torjam chiadi mangta teni ani nganzu kuyu trola dogoras. The kuyu trola drondi and delini bi socialaya ransing kanga tredwech. The inguyanza and the sanji chomde di church leya one tani tana jangi jibaina and semgam laya pemba kuyu laya pemba zambeling shidelaya pemba di yimbati gacha yatamba reshas right.
So then this river running dry, you can say that, of course, that's a result of the world heating up or climate change. But you can also say that it is pretty much related to the way that we're using our resources, heedlessly using our resources to the point in which we put in danger living being and the environment. When we damage the environment, we also make it difficult for sentient beings, for living beings to live happily or peacefully in those areas. So when we look at how we want to develop our mind in using teachings like that, we want to use teachings such as that in order to affect the minds of people, to make sure that we do not behave in a way that create damage to the environment and thereby create damage to sentient beings, to living beings that live in those environments.
That decision yasarita. Is it lawyer choose?
Lord Juncha.
Tang Wei Yang La said the Tang Anzuchi Chatsia, Chokokia, Jesu Ranchia, and it's Chungo so tabala, so young so tab Kanji, and it Kiawak Sabati, Mochigoris.
So in going back to the text, as we said, we are looking at the 7 limbs of worship. Of the 7 limbs of worship, we have covered 6, and now we're going to look at the 7th. And the 7th limb of worship is the limb of dedication. So what have we had? What did we have up until now? We had the first limb, which is homage or prostration, then making offering, purifying negative actions, rejoicing, asking to turn the wheel of Dhamma, asking not to pass into Parinibbana. And now it's the limb of dedication, the 7th limb.
That Junzi Kajin Mochigoris Laundi, Nanju, Tango Chisadi, so and Chanchulaya, Zoshanlaya, Mogores, Nig Gawa Kansabati, Simjan Tamji, the Pendit Tungi, Sanji Komoruchich, and Tobichel, Gyo Show Samigi, and he gets a telemichin, Munamjana, Mochagores, Motiris.
We're dedicating our virtue for complete enlightenment. For the sake of attaining the state of complete enlightenment, for the sake of all sentient beings, may all our roots of virtue contribute to that. This is the way that we dedicate.
The Dichibaino, Ani Benada, Zoya Mevachik, Sanji Kumbo Mato Bart, Nanzuta, Kawanikawa Junjin, Sanji Kumbo Drogo Chonia Kanji, Sanji Kumbo Mato Bardo, Ani Rangi Sasha Getsadi, Zoya Mevachik, Kundrugures, Penna Nanzuchik, Ani Chupuba Kandi, Dux Shajabano Ko Zodogras. Ichuba can Kedrochin, Jamson and Ushabana, and a Jamso Masabatu, Jamson Alaya Timchin, Zoya Meva Chawa Nanshin, Geza di Chanjula, Motuvana, Chanjukuma Matoba, Zomaris, this was.
By dedicating our roots of virtue for the sake of complete enlightenment, we ensure that our roots of virtue will not become exhausted until our attainment of the state of complete enlightenment. It might take us eons, one eon after the next, many eons. And yet, if we dedicate our roots of virtue for the sake of finally attaining the state of complete enlightenment, even if we have to go in samsara for that long, even if it takes us eons over eons to attain the state of enlightenment, our roots of virtue will not become exhausted. It's just like saying, for example, if you look at the glass on Geshe's table that has a little bit of water and some flowers, but it has some water. If you leave it like that, the water will run out at some point, will dry out. But if you take the water and pour it to the vast ocean, the water in the cup, you can say that will not become exhausted until the great ocean is exhausted. So by dedicating our roots of virtue for the sake of complete enlightenment, it is like that. You can say that we send our roots of virtue to the great ocean of roots of virtue that will not become exhausted until the heart of enlightenment is attained.
That's the chance about Chujin Shabai, say, Tigitirisra, Tigiti, Kongi Yala, Drugi, Kiwi, Geza Tamji, Simjan Tamji, and Told Chedi, Zobi Chanji, Guru, Dumba Trawi, movie, Nayam Zebos.
Whatever slight positive potential I may have created by paying homage, offering, and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddhas stay and teach, and now dedicate all this for full awakening. So this verse is the final verse from the King of Prayers related to the 7 limbs of worship. So Lama Tsongkhapa draws from that verse, and he says in his explanation with respect to dedication, the limb of dedication is set forth in the single stanza, prostrations and so forth, or paying homage and so forth. All roots of virtue represented by the previous 6 limbs are made common property of all sentient beings and never come to an end, since they have been dedicated with strong aspiration as causes of complete enlightenment.
Yig Shendu Mayamba, Dabu, Chiget Embassy, Chena, Sonomi Pumbo, Paltumevan Zenos.
And to summarize that, it says, if you thus develop an understanding of the meaning of those words and slowly do as was taught without allowing your mind to wander, you will hold immeasurable heaps of merit.
Terda, Nanzo Sanji, Yana Dumbegi, Dini, Tiji Sholoka, doing Sorachik, doing Gijik, Madame Mudasra, the Digi Tembigi, and Yana Dungi, Sajang Nedi, Suzia, Burj, Shima Cheche, and Sig the Dunchi, and Sig the Tembilia, Sig and Sam Shen, the Chignam Yunanshi Madrigal, Tarang Sidin Pole, Sound and to Sebanata. And Sonam Padme was Sagres, and he Lojong Tiredas, the Ratimji, Tony Lojong and a Kansan, Jilla, and Loti, and gave Cholia, Nangi Ledevachik. Yungioras, Lo Comdit and the Siro, Yonda Mayodi, Comdit Demadilla, Ralligos Ras.
So we've finished looking at the 7 limbs of worship, and in Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation, he was drawing from the King of Prayer, Samantabhadra's King of Prayer, which contains the 7 limbs of worship at the beginning of the prayer. We use those verses, the prayer, for accumulating the collections and purifying negativities and obscurations. So in your personal practice, if you implement those 7 verses, those 7 limbs, and you take it slowly, you recite them slowly. You attend your mind to the meaning of the verses without allowing your mind to waver, to be distracted. Over time, you will accumulate a great accumulation of merit. It will constitute a practice of mind training. And if you do it repeatedly again and again, and you acquaint your mind with it, at some point, your mind will naturally gravitate towards the wholesome. This is what happens when you take the time to habituate your mind with virtuous states. That will give you an opportunity to accumulate the collections and to purify negativities and obscurations.
Reda gewa che tuk matur se di komdri ten tu matur la ya rale dos ra manzu gewi lo di gyundeng ge ta komdri me di samala gewi lo ki de kal khaw shuj chadam monsong lo ki de le la shu imba di chadam monsong lo le shu chin ko ngang kom de yawansa komdri shuj son de yawansa ko le la chago sras ra gewi lo la ya komdri tem yawansa 다 컴지 땡고도 컴지 땡한테 지 돈자 카시라고 다와 카시 로 카시 지 나로라야 컴지 땡 투야지 레몬도스 고 진짠 지 약부지 마차거든요 거까지 둘이 같이 거는 지히 삼비기 세나야 담자산 컴지 땡 봐나 땡땡 아니 고 컴지 땡 용야 여버지 디레와스로
Whatever virtue or non-virtue we create, it is related to what we're used to our habits. If we want to develop virtuous states, we need to become habituated with them. Without becoming familiar and habituated with them, it will not happen. We can look at how difficult it is to develop virtuous states of mind without being used to them. After all, we're currently more used to anger, attachment, and so forth. We're naturally used to them so that they naturally arise in our mind. We're not accustomed to the virtuous side to the degree in which we're accustomed to anger, attachment, and so forth. So then when we spend time in cultivating virtue in order to create new habits, just doing it for a few weeks is not going to cut it. Doing it for a few weeks or a few months, or even just for a couple of years is not going to be enough in order to accustom our mind to the virtuous side. That will require a long-term approach to becoming accustomed to virtuous states. And also, we need to have a certain commitment to doing that, in thinking that no matter how hard it will be, no matter what I will occasion to meet, I will still continue to acquaint my mind with the wholesome side, with the virtuous side.
Terida komdi tendi ra jik na juta lo mambu rin ya jik jang dewa ni ya jik shu mejo ro jik komdi te ma de di dindi chago za de zo jik pe na ngara ro nyam nyong ro jik ra kaju sig pi le ya komdi te ma di chugi ani le ha ro ya ba dan ani jik ser ro ya ba ra ani dindi yung do sta din ti kya shi ta yung do ra.
So without being committed to doing that and making sure that you acquaint your mind with that, you might be thinking that I've been doing it for many years and yet it carries almost no power whatsoever. Geshe says that at least he can recognize that based upon his personal experience, that when you decide deliberately to habituate your mind with some virtuous state, over time, when you acquire the habit, it becomes easier, but also you get better clarity with respect to those virtuous states.
Terda kaso dangi kechi cho megyo ro jik sheba ino pe ro jik shebo sira.
So just to give you an example, it might be a bit a simple or simplistic example, a bit useless, but let's see how it goes.
Nge tsamzala nge chitang nge mo jaya la ya, mo la ya, yiche teza mes ro nga, yiche teza mes. Nge manga gyanro mo chigi, chamu kyungu res. Gyanro mo chigi chamu kyungu re, chamu pe tigbu yo res. Tenza gyanro mo chitak chik, kuma mazo kong gengi chamu kyungi, pigi chamu kyungi ti shodo jars, ti tingal nangsang. Tingal nandi tsambala ngi mi shenla ngi moja tu tingi chimes samsa ngana moja goras ngi parkap chile jita ngi tingi khachu jangde ba chik pile ya jo ya pura chik mandro ya kari na samsa ngi nima chile tik most chik jadi tinala ta tsam yorda ta chik ni kewata ya seda chik yansi ta ya seda ani chik Karkar division chegor se mon chida the John said Newton John said ngala pabitus
In Tibetan culture, people like going for divination. In Tibetan culture, they're called Mo. So Geshe said that he himself doesn't have a lot of trust in that system, kind of is not really used to that system, but his teacher, his precious teacher, used to do a lot of divinations, and people say that his divinations were quite precise. So Geshe said that he himself doesn't really do it much. Over the years, he was asked by some people to do divinations for them, and Geshe always declined to do that because he doesn't have trust, at least in his ability to do that. But when you do a divination, you use different things. So one of the systems of divination uses a box with a couple of dice. Die, you say? Yeah. Dice is plural or singular? Die is plural. Die is plural. All right, die is the plural. So you use die, and then you have, according to the combination that you get, you have a book that tells you how to interpret the divination. So Geshe said that he's not doing it for others, but his teacher, before passing away, gave him that divination, the divination die and the book and so forth. So Geshe says that sometimes he does it with respect to himself. So one day he was kind of having a divination with respect to himself, asking, what do I need to do in order to become more acquainted with virtue states? So then he did a divination, then I went to the book. The book gives you different things that you need to do. You either go for, you're told that you have to do this puja, or that you have to create this image, or that you have to do some study, or you need to do some training. Anyway, to cut it short, Geshe says that the result that he got from that divination was that he still needs to study. It still needs to train.
원에 가서 같이 가지고 쓰기 장투가나 아니 야기 두고요 아 슈대점 태그면은 안 대점기 아니 야기 두무트와디 중이 차기도 하더라.
Anyway, Geshe said that jokes aside, this is quite true. If you don't train well enough, if you don't develop that mental energy or mental power, whatever you do will also lack power, will lack focus. If you don't develop habits, if you do things as a one thing off, without it carrying a lot of power, you'll not get a great result. In order for your mental training to get better results, you do need to develop new habits, better habits, stronger habits.
데르다 벽라마 첼체지기 몰라 이치슈치그레스 야오르무치레 까무바레 스드루무치레 라마서르무치 몰라 쇼이지치다스라 난저 게임무지 타치기도 비기 모나 칸파바 야차 야다마 문지치그레스.
Anyway, it seems that the great Tibetan lamas, at least the ones that are at the forefront, they have great trust in the system of divination. So His Honesty the Lama Karmapa, Taisidu Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. At least Geshe-la's teacher, when he was doing a divination, a more divination, he used to do it once and then just follow through to the result of them all, without kind of going for other consultation and so forth. If he got a result, this is what he was going with.
The two things are this. Pena not again more that not till your asra. Can a lelaka ni show ni you your mardas. Kingan ni you your money pandenamula you chigordas.
And when Geshe-la's teacher was doing a divination, and Geshe-la was around quite a few times when a divination was done, his teacher used to say that it's not that I'm making the die quiver. I'm using Palden Lama, which is a Dharma protector. So I'm using her to quiver. She's doing the quivering. It's not me that is making the die move.
That touching the Tangnanda, Yichetan, Teba, and it's Samba Zanjang, that's Pandalam use mod Pandalam rang use on Sangi, Muba di Tony, Chetuna, Tende, Pandalam, Troyo Marvas.
So now if you do it like that, when you have this utmost trust and faith and pure appearance in a deity such as Pandan Lama, then you think that it's not you that is doing the divination, it's not you that is creating that movement, it is Pandan Lama. And Pandan Lama does not make mistakes.
Kansan Pandan Lama did it, then the Pandan Lama Debo Koranolaya, Yawa Kungi Chilea, Yawa Kungi Chilea, Mausor Gamos, Sensor Shawachiris. Mausor Gamos, no Pandalam Sera, Mingra. Yawa Kungi Chilela, Mausor Gamoshi, Sensors, Mintasha. There is Lada.
Maxo sana Magya.
Mausor said that big Nanzu source ejora to be a ratic source. No. Tindi gain damage, Lagosari.
There is a phrase for Pandan Lama, which refers to Pandan Lama. Lama is the enlightened activities of all the Buddhas being embodied by Pandan Lama. She was called the queen carrying swords or something like that. Probably I have to look at the phrase for Pandan Lama to look at the swords or knives or whatever. Anyway, Pandan Lama is the one that embodies the enlightened activities of all the Buddhas. We have a variety of practices that we use, coming from a sutra perspective or from a tantric perspective. When we do a tantric practice, it is associated with a certain deity, and those deities embody or emphasize certain aspects, and in the mind we relate to those aspects. We need to find ways to relate to the aspects that these deities embody. And when we have trust and faith in those deities, such as Chenrezig and Manjushri, and here Pandan Lama and so forth, and also in thinking of the aspects that those deities embody, we then bring the aspects of those deities embody into the practice and let it affect our mind. Different deities embody different aspects of an enlightened being. One deity is, for example, Tara, embodying enlightened activities of the Buddha. Enlightened activities of the Buddha can be peaceful activities or wrathful activities. So likewise, there are different deities embodying those enlightened activities. So Tara embodies peaceful enlightened activities, whereas Pandan Lama embodies wrathful enlightened activities. So in our mind, we relate to those activities in a particular way. We relate to those activities so that in due point, we ourselves will come to embody those activities.
Nanzota Sangi di Simjing Chedu, Sangi Bainza, Sangiza, Savijelaya, Ledin Sodi, and Drodin Kanya Dredos, Simjing, that dig in Drodin Kamalaya, and Sangi Rangi, number 10, Shubainani, Nanzu Jetu Yomaras, these are D, and it's 다 라마 예담 아니 지 아니 최경의 소비기 아니 남바 진치니 아니 팸니 아니 두지 된세기요 다 여러와스로
A Buddha, an enlightened being, has an different types of excellent qualities: physical, mental, and verbal qualities. The qualities of the mind of the Buddha are qualities of knowledge, loving care, and ability. A Buddha is acting for the sake of all sentient beings, and yet, in order to be able to interact with the enlightened activities of the Buddhas appear to us in a variety of ways, because for us, being ordinary beings, it's not that we have the ability to meet a Buddha in actuality, in the form of Buddha. So for that, the Buddhas appear to us in a certain form, in the form of a spiritual teacher, the lamas, right? So they appear to us as lamas who teach us the Dhamma. They appear to us as meditational deities, as Dhamma protectors, as dakinis, and so forth. And through that, we train our mind in order for ourselves to be able to embody those enlightened qualities.
Teresa dinza dabena sangi triledi yidamgi number senanta ani jizu drama ro shiwe number jizu drama ani tapin number ta jikpanda namuta the tinti mambu yoros tinti re ani chik ninji sangi ninji ti ta yidam number pena yidam doji jikse tawo ani chegyong number ani gombu chadu tawo and tie number and Papa Jerisi, but dinty chenny and number drumming tony and duji ten securis.
So those are just the ninja and
Ninji such a sheriff satchel does not.
So we spoke about the enlightened activities of the Buddhas. The other qualities of Buddha that certain deities embody. Like, for example, when you think of the quality of compassion, we have also a variety of deities that embody this aspect of compassion. For example, Vajrabharava. So you can say that Vajrabharava stands for wisdom, but you can also say that Vajrabharava stands for compassion. We have 6 Ams Mahakala. We have Arya Chinrezig, Avalokiteshvara. Different types of deity can embody different types of compassion, peaceful compassion, wrathful compassion, and so forth.
The Gurgum that Nanganzo Lameki Tartuon Digi, any Niji the ceremony, Tab the ceremony, logic moon and Rogora, and Ditsuda, and Karin number 7, Pinika Shachora. Or didn't that didn't that in my loss again, the child Chobo Kobo Sodaba. Iran Sosava Yena, Shaban Jonta, Iran Choji, Rang Gava Gawakoman, Gava Pevatan, Moven Sabat, Jambata, Baby Gavan, Nung and Mambo Peo, Negos to Jewish Choni, 7 Giva Namja, Naya Meseva Chevati, do not Saba Jama, Per she, Meseva Cheva Summons. Then you make us over to the Menda Pulas, Mijeva number Summons said.
Anyway, going back to the text, we looked at the need to make the meaning of the words, to take the meaning of the words to heart. Let's look at the next section that comes under the section of the respective classification. Accordingly, 5 limbs, which are prostrating, offering, requesting, supplicating, and rejoicing, belong to the collection of accumulations. Confessing purifies obscurations. One aspect of rejoicing, the cultivation of joy in one's own virtue, multiplies the virtue. By means of dedicating, the virtues of collecting, purifying, and multiplying, however small, are multiplied manifold, then what would normally come to an end after producing a temporary effect is made inexhaustible. In brief, there are the 3: accumulation, purification, as well as multiplication and making inexhaustible.
That Deni Menda Puya, sorry, Teni me was our Chedis, Menda Pulas. The Tikalaya, the Chikulong Zudi, Kargore Slandi, Shenila Makubani, and the Shinju Loki Lonata and Gabatan, Shenila Kubani, Shinju Loki Lonata, the Ladu Gabatan, and it Yen Chinangi Parjatam, the New Church, Chingila Soro said, 60, Ratsidin Tempitoni, and it Dumba Travel Lemon, Sotavos, the Sotavitonta, Menda Pu Zeta, Figita, the Yonanga Soba, and it Chigumuchi Riktamji, and it Yorwas the rock.
So we make the 7 limbs of worship together with making a mandala offering. So to that, Lama Tsongkhapa says, mandala offerings and requests for blessings. Then with a clear visualization of the objects after a mandala and with strong aspiration, make numerous requests. So in making those requests together with making a mandala offerings. Please grant blessings that all erroneous attitudes such as disrespecting the spiritual teacher may cease, and that all the non-erroneous attitudes towards the spiritual teacher may come with an ease. I request blessings that all outer and inner obstacles may be pacified. So we're making offerings in order to make those requests. So not only making the mandala offerings, we can also make offerings of the 7 objects of desire, make offerings of musical instruments and so forth.
Tirda Dinalaya Mendapu Kalatu, the Migwa Jangwa, Chikshinila Makuba Sobigi, and the Shinjulo Tadan Gaba, said the big kitchen with Chagoris, and the Nanchu, how do the Lamrim da, Indila Soba, Kanji Kang Shimba D, and you told to Jaya Chit, the Yamlin Chingijimbaina, that and it's Goshin into said the and Shuji kitchen book, the Tensi, and it's Gavishin Dig, and Kevin Zaunin Maris, Susurangi Kevin Ra Kanji, Nansu Nanchu Chiati, Sanji Chilerji Tony, and Nanzu Logic, Yotana Matavi, Tele Shembig, and Nanzu Lon Yotayaki, Tapchi Zaunin Yomaris, that D Sanji Chile Jusagi, Goda Masona, and it's Tanshu, and Shenyan. Tensu Tiredos, Shenyelia, Kubachivat, Kubayova, Tebayova, Tiredos, the D Maloba, D Magua Masomba, D Sota Zintuachi Yovana, and Mitigi, Misenala in a ya, ko any tragic on the Asda, Lojontes Madomajivan, Dig, and Semlea, Pendochimbo on there, Tindigi Keba Beosaris, Ra.
As Lama Tsongkhapa says here in quoting this verse, please grant blessings that all erroneous attitudes such as disrespecting the spiritual teacher may cease. So we are doing this practice in order to put a stop to all erroneous states, of mind. And this is really important. So whatever we take up in our training, in our study and practice, we might take the Lamrim tradition into our study and practice. We do that in order to transform our mind. And in order to effect our mental transformation, we begin with relying upon a spiritual teacher, correctly relying upon a spiritual teacher. And we're doing that not for their sake, not for the sake of a spiritual teacher, but for our sake, for the sake of transforming our own mind. And we do that from the very beginning, cultivating a proper way of relying upon a spiritual teacher, developing a sense of respect and faith. We want to do that so that our mind will not continue to dwell in erroneous states of mind, but to be able to affect the mind in a way that will affect the rest of our life, even so far as having to risk our life, you might say, in a certain situation. We want to make sure that we do not hold on to erroneous states of mind, even if it's at the risk of our life. So if we then become thus committed to transforming our mind, Geshe feels that over time, you will find that it helps your mind, it benefits your mind. You get new perspectives and your mind becomes more at ease.
There the Naranga something goes, Ranga Kadu, the G Kanjinga, Papa Payers, Kibu, any Piggy Jig. Tangan Jig Day, Undragon, John Den, the Jig said, Dida, Cookie Martin, a Kanji, Sam Papa Bo, and Kibu pay Jig Kang somebody anti. Tata Roach, Rode Roach, Card de Cardrona Yanchik, and Milena Yanchik, Chambu Yonyatos Danchik, but did some along Gigin into Tolia, Tetsamgi, and you may some sort of Nimazenolia, that didn't any out cheer some biggie, some which tea toninga, and then the Lamagivishingi, Malaya, Jabjurda, Chile US, some tea Malaya, what are you use raw? Timadang Achim is an online issues, Jan, Geshe, issue, some kindness.
At least Geshe says that from his personal experience, he finds a way of relying upon a spiritual teacher to be really helpful in cultivating a relaxed and easy approach to life. Geshe feels that his mind has really made more happy and more relaxed, more at ease. In terms of kind of financial wealth, access to resources and so forth, Geshe said that he hasn't been able to accomplish much, but still in terms of being able to sustain a happy and healthy state of mind through relying upon a spiritual teacher, Geshe feels that he has been doing it well. In a sense that thinking of the things that he was able to accomplish, or at least to do well in his life, he was able to rely properly upon a spiritual teacher. It's not kind of thinking that his greater accomplishments were to become a Geshe, to become learned, to do this and that in the monastery, but to rely properly upon a spiritual teacher, which Geshe feels is something that has made his mind more relaxed, more at ease and happier.
There didn't come Narasanolaya, one any singing in society, Ra Kitcheshu, Chagi Yobadi, and same dingy soyers, that did soyans that D and Malayachi, the machine not that's all in the dream of Samsung Rich. Nenga Cheshu, Gadu or Samsung, D soy with on issues.
And that being the case, Geshe really wants to convey the importance of relying upon a spiritual teacher. In his mind, Geshe feels that this is one of the most important topics. Since it does help the mind, Geshe thought that it's important also to share it with others.
Any digitally any pivot beton storage. No jira, dog the tanda dingy canna was show. But dingy, that didn't Tambo Jandi, not all a single that you think when you should say, 6 Johnny, and give up it service. Get under chamber and up, give it service, and then it's 6 and that the kind of the it's out in shingle. And then you do standing at any thing I kill me, Pacha, the Yasara, some sort of thing. That is some sugar, sitting some years.
The first text that Geshe had to memorize when he was just a kid was the foundation of all good qualities. So he was still living with his family. His family was a family of nomads. So they were living in a tent that was made of wool. And he remembers that as a young child, or as a young boy, he got this text where he had to memorize. And the text came with this loose leaf. It was also very old. The color was kind of similar to this color, but darker or kind of more dirty, you could say. And having memorized the text, Geshe said that he didn't understand what the text meant, but it began with the foundation of all good qualities is the kind and precious root guru. Correct reliance upon him is the root of the path. So not having understood the meaning of that when he was a child, he still memorized this text, but over the years, he came to understand the importance and the import of this passage. When he does feel that a correct reliance upon a spiritual teacher is the root of one's spiritual path.
re ta do sig chi nang che ta ni lam gi shi ni ta sen de mang bu ji le ya tu ya ko ko ra ka sang bu sha wen za ani dim ji le ten ta chi nang che to ya chi lo kan zang re jang ba ta ni shi ni nang ga do a go shi ni ten zu se de nang ga di a sang ji chang sum ki chile di sam le ju se ko ta ma so na ani ki che shu di ani gi shi ni le ya tu yo ba dim ji chi ani ko ra won di 아니 신이 되서 쇼체를 줘도스라 아니 기신이 생기디 자체를 줘야지 아니 샘나 용구도스라 디 참이 장 수장 바인다 용투야지라서 미생가 지고 말아서라 람람 참만나려야 람람 가주스 뼈 망보여 참 이거래야 신이 되서 개치시 신송여스라
So thinking about it, Geshe feels that it indicates at least that he have had some imprints on his mind stream that came from previous life that made him appreciate the importance of relying upon a spiritual teacher. So then, having grown up, he had the opportunity to meet with qualified spiritual teachers, with lamas, with spiritual friends, and to study from them, which means that he had the ability to engage with the enlightened activities of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So through properly relying upon the spiritual teachers, through training in faith and a reverence, sense of reverence to the spiritual teacher, you receive the enlightened activities of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So Geshe feels that then it creates the ability to be more focused, to do it better, to do it stronger, to receive the enlightened activities in a way that is much more effective. And that depends upon how you rely upon a spiritual teacher, as indicated by a variety of texts, such as, for example, the texts that explain the states of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim texts.
And the lamsa gang manton chain the gang 6 ons and gain some general shoot the king and do snatch can music you grace and not the songs then the thing is some on your shoot one any gang chilab juice on some ngalam ya shoot test on some control the dinga some show yesra.
At the end of Geshe's teacher's life, he was bedridden, and Geshe had the opportunity to nurse him and to care for him for 3 years. And that also included, that was also inclusive of, changing his bed sheets or changing his clothes, helping him to clean up after his bodily activities as he was bedridden. And one day, Geshe said that his hand got a bit dirty, and he was trying to hide it, kind of, for his teachers not to see it, but his teacher did notice that, and he said, don't worry about it, kind of, in the future, that will definitely affect your mind, that will definitely become helpful in terms of properly relying upon a spiritual teacher. So Geshe feels that at least for him, he saw that as receiving the blessings of his own teacher.
Direshata, Rotan Dumba Tabita, Tindish Gogres, Lemon Tundorendos, and Nengatsao, Singing Maku and Shinjulo or Tadangavata, and singing the Kubo so Shinjumolo, Lonatada, Della de Kiva, the Chinangi, and Chinangita, and Gibjo Chevalaya, Churchevalaya, and Parche Kandajovan, Titamji, and Niwacho, Shinjula Solo say. And sig the young champion, Denchi, and the Mendapu, no, and the Solabach Zodores Ra.
As Lama Tsongkhapa explains here, with strong aspirations, make numerous requests, doing it again and again, requesting, please grant blessings that all erroneous attitudes such as disrespecting the spiritual teacher may cease, and that all non-erroneous attitudes towards the spiritual teacher may come about with ease. I request blessings that all outer and inner obstacles may be pacified.
예, 아니 다 변한다 제롬치 라면엔주 this tuduros that's so chigoras the dikalia chik manchedi and jeromji tugalia sosu gerumchi yob di tonmachi ani kosum to gichinda ani jugu yobachi sound tamwaina penata chik sosu samnalia mixing pendo yobachi kansana ani shung podngadi ani gerumchi dunlia jambainza and pay kebados dandi chalaya da jerom chi sompo du chobgi gi tenda chanzanda ni sing marde ya kanji sompo du chobgi ya one gi chi same ding and yon thobachi le tu ya tian ani gerom chi ka den yachi ya tu yoros ra.
If you combine it with doing a guru yoga practice of Lama Tsongkhapa, in which you visualize Lama Tsongkhapa in front of you, and you think that you attend the blessings of body, speech, and mind of Lama Tsongkhapa, you attend it in your heart, it does give you a special benefit, a special help into your spiritual practice. After all, Lama Tsongkhapa himself has studied the 5 great classics. He composed 18 volumes of teachings based on the 5 classics. And Geshe said that he personally is not well versed in all of them, and still he finds those teachings to be really inspiring, as they explain the 5 great classics containing the essential teachings that the Buddha gave. So thank you very much. We'll leave it here for today. So before we leave it here for now, we have tomorrow a day of, how do we call the day? I forgot.
Friends of Chinrezik.
Friends of Chinrezik, in which we use the day to do different jobs and tasks across the property. So if you have free time, if you want to come and join us. If you want to come and join us, then I think that we start at 9. Geshe is, as part of the whole effort, is going to be the cook for tomorrow, right? So today is sitting on the throne. Tomorrow is going to be back at the kitchen, cooking lunch for everyone. So if you have time and you want to come along, please don't hold back. All right, let's do some dedications. Sancho Rinpoche, Maki Pana Ke Yochi, Ke Wanyam Pane Payo, Gone Kundu Pelawarashu, Nyudada Lama Sange Tugune, Droa Chikyama Lupa, Te Sala Gopashu, Kowe Shinkandi, Pendam Dewa Malu Juwe, Chere Siwan Tensi Gatsoi. Shape site patu te nyuchi. Shashi changu piawe. Tenzi kyo pewe kunso dogo. Chosun kowe le montutu. Anda sotu che kondu shaten shu.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sahanda.
No.
Sahanda.
Bishop Cubes.
Bye-bye.